Hello, welcome to Chapter 2 Data Analysis. Like the last presentation, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through all of the graphs in Chapter 2 to help you make sense of it and put the data in context. And this particular presentation, I'm going to do a little something different. Since a lot of the data that we've been examining so far and will be examining, since so much of the data is in index form, I want to go over this particular technique and how to present and analyze data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the real basics of creating an index. And it's actually quite simple. First of all, you got to start with some data. And what do I have here? I have 4 years of housing price data. So I've got 2005 through 2008, and I've got the average housing price for each year, and it's in thousands. So 2005 is really 342,200, and so on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this data to create an index, and then I'll go over what that index represents. So there's really only two steps to creating an index. So step one, you have to select a base period. Now the base period is kind of like a starting point. It's not really a starting point because you don't have to create your base period from the beginning of your data set, but it's a way to launch your calculations. And I'll go over the significance of a base period momentarily. But let's select 2005 data as our base period. And again, it doesn't have to be at the beginning of your data set to be a base period. After you selected your base period, step two, take all of the values in your data set and divide it by the base period. So for 2005, we're going to take 342,200 and divide it by the base period, which is 32,200. And you're going to get the number 1. And indexes are either presented in 1 or 100 formats. And so I'm going to present it in 100 base format. So basically, what we're doing here is we're taking the result here, which is 1, and multiplying it by 100. And that's what we get here. So let's now take 2006 data and divide it by the base period, and we're going to get 102.1. 2007 data, 359,900 divided by the base period, 103.7. And then finally, 2008 data, 359,900 divided by the base period, and you're going to get 105.2. So now let's examine this data. Basically, the value or the thing that you get from creating an index is it's very easy to see how your raw data changes over time or in relationship to the base period. For example, from 2005 to 2006, it's quite clear that the home prices increased by 2.1% because we went from 100 to 102.1. And for 2007, we see that the index has increased by 3.7% since the base period because we have a value of 103.7. And of course, the index has gone up, or the home prices have gone up on average 5.2% since the base period from 2005 to 2008 because we have a value of 105.2. So the index makes it very simple for you to see how the indicator has changed since the base period. And of course, if you want to figure out year-to-year change, you simply take for example, what has happened to this home prices from 2007 to 2008? Well, to figure out that percent change, I simply am going to take 105.2 divided by 103.7, subtract 1, multiply by 100, and that's your percentage change for only 1 year. So a lot of the data is going to be presented in this way. And that leads us to figure 2.1. As you can see, it's an index, and it tells you what the base period is. The base period is the data found in 1890. And so you look at this data, and you could see that the index value in around 2009 is 200. So that means this index, housing prices, has gone up by 100% since 1890. But what's also interesting is how little home prices have increased for a long period of time. From 1890, the base period, to 1990, you could see home prices, uh, real home prices, that's mean adjusting for inflation, has gone up only about maybe 15–20% here. But then you see this tremendous spike in the starting in the mid 90s, going all the way to 2008. And this helps put in perspective that there was a big housing bubble building in the 2000s. And you could see this based upon this historic data. And here we have, again, an index. Now, this doesn't give us the base year. It could be, uh, the base period could be January 2005. I just don't know. It wasn't given it to us. But you can see here how the housing prices went up rapidly uh, in the 2000s. And so this is basically kind of like a zoom in right here. In figure 2.3, this says something about housing activity. So home prices are going up. Well, if home prices are going up, that means people want more homes. That means it's more profitable to build homes. And lo and behold, these are housing starts. Housing starts is an indicator that tells you when you started the construction of the home. And as you can see, that we have this rapid increase in the 2000s of housing starts. So more and more homes were started, and then you get this collapse of housing starts. And that starts right around 2006. Now, home prices were still going up a little bit, but people stopped building homes. And you could see the housing crash started late 2005, and that's when home builders started to pull back a lot in terms of starting new construction. Now here we see something about from the banking perspective in housing, and we're looking at the loss on home mortgages as a percent. And so what this data means is let's take a look at um, Q4 1999. It's roughly 0.15. And what that tells you is basically for every $1 million of mortgages, banks were losing about $1,500 on that $1 million investment or $1 million worth of loans. And that tells you something about the default rates on mortgages. And so that's a very relatively low default rate. And you can see we had these spikes in early 2000 and 2003. And now, does that mean the housing market was crashing? No, it doesn't, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this data and I'm going to go to figure 2.5, and you see this right here? This is this data. See these two spikes? That's what you see right here. And what you see here is when defaults started to go up, the losses banks were taking increased. And you could see it increased by more than a factor of 10 from early 2000 to 2009. And you could see they were losing about $1,500 for every $1 million invested, and they're losing about $3,000 for every mortgage, $1 million of mortgage. So you can see this really puts into perspective uh, the losses generated by the collapse in housing in banking. And you could also see that in order to buy all of those homes, we have another indicator, household debt as a percentage of GDP. Now, as a percentage of GDP, GDP represents the economy. And one of the things you have to do with economic data is to try to put it in perspective. For example, if I told you I spent 2,000, let me change it, $10,000 a year on shoes, let's say. Given my income, that's a lot of money to be spending on shoes. And you may ask me to see a financial advisor to maybe kind of talk me out of spending so much money on one particular item of clothing. But if I told you Oprah Winfrey spent $10,000 a year on shoes, you would say Oprah Winfrey is not in any way in danger of bankrupting herself because Oprah Winfrey makes a lot of money. So spending on shoes as a percentage of income is one way of putting your spending habit in perspective, in context. Well, this is another way of doing it. If you look at economic data and you put that data as a percentage of GDP, it gives you an idea of the magnitudes of what you're looking at. And here we see personal mortgage debt as a percentage of GDP. You can see it was going up a little bit in the 1960s, a little bit faster in the 1970s, and then leveled out in the 80s. And you see this rapid increase. So by the time we got to 2008, basically the total debt was about the equivalent size of our economy, 100% of GDP. And you could see that uh, personal credit debt didn't rise as much. So basically, the debt homes were taking on were based upon mortgages. So this tells you that people were buying more homes by borrowing more money. So that's all of the figures for chapter 2, and then we'll talk again with data later in the book.